and NCNC had benefited from the rigged independence elections. Each understood the importance of the census, since seats in the federal parliament were to be apportioned according to the population of each region, with the political parties reflecting regional and ethnic divides. It was clear to the contestants that the crucial first step to winning the next, and indeed possibly all future elections in the country, was to win the census due in 1962. Since neither of the former alliance partners trusted the other, a Briton, Mr. J.J. Warren, was appointed to head the count. Even so, the exercise ended in controversy when the results suggested that the South was more populous than the North. Notwithstanding the British manipulation through the division of the Cameroons, Harold Smith put the census controversy into context here. Harold Smith, he said, the massive power of the North rested on the census figures produced by the British officials in the early 1950s. All attempts to confirm those census figures since have proved a failure, and this has become the most bitterly contested issue in Nigerian politics. After the census in 1962, it was found that the northern region no longer had a numerical majority over the rest of the country combined. The NPC leaders found these results unacceptable and cancelled the results. The 1962 census returns were never officially published. In a fresh census in 1963, the North improved on its 1962 figures. If Southerners had thought that the new figures would end the North absolute majority, they were to be bitterly disappointed. It was little wonder that Awolowo commented bitterly that for himself and his party, the twilight of democracy and the rule of law in Nigeria is changing into darkness. While the census dispute was still raging, the western branch of the NCNC, led by Chief Fani Kayode, who was then the deputy premier of the western region, decamped from the party to join with Akintola's followers to form a new party under an old name, the Nigerian National Democratic Party, NNDP. By this move, Akintola had contrived to take back the NCNC, the political legacy of Abat Macaulay in the Western region. After the Eastern region's challenge to the census figures was rejected by the Supreme Court on 29 August 1964, the federal government proceeded to release the final census figures, suggesting a total population of 55,620,268, of which 29,758,875 was said to be in the northern region, giving the North a comfortable majority over the South with 53.5% of the total. With the census battle thus having been won and lost, the stage was now set for the showdown federal elections. Before breaking up the alliance with the East, Ahmadu Bello, the leader of the NPC, was never one to mince his word for long. With Awolowo in prison and Akintola having been installed as premier of the Western region, Bello effectively brought the alliance with the Eastern region and the NCNC to an end with the following declaration. even if my party fails to get the required majority in the next federal elections, it will definitely not enter into a coalition with NCNC. The Igbos have never been true friends of the North and never will be. After using Azikiwe and the NCNC to neutralize Awolowo and his action group, Ahmadu Bello was done. They never trusted each other. Azikiwe knew. But he played along because he was going to become the governor general anyway. That was enough for him. Power. And when they were done with him, they put the entire blame on the Igbos. And at that time, the declaration was made. Igbos have never been true friend of the North and never will be. Ahmadu Bello. So it was the turn of the East after neutralizing the West in order to continue the control and the power dominance that they inherited from the British. That is the story. That is your history. It is now the turn of the East. Let's read further. On 26 September 1964, the NPC-NCNC alliance government was formally dissolved. 15 months later, on 15th January 1966, Ahmadu Bello and Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa would be murdered in a military coup. And by July 1967, the former partners, the North and the East, would be at war in the Biafran war. The build-up to crisis and conflict began with the federal election of December 1964. Let me take my first tea break. I know some of you probably are joining in now because we started early, okay? But it's no biggie, all right? As you are joining, kindly share it. Invite your friends, tag those that should be tagged, and then by the time I finish the reading part, we will open the line. So you can call in, express your own personal view on all of this going forward. Right. Let us continue. The end of the First Republic. Having failed with its challenge to the 1964 census or census figures, the NCNC knew that there was little hope for a fair electoral contest against its former partner. When the head of the Western branch of the party, Samuel Akintola, demerged the NNDP from the NCNC and went into alliance with the NPC under the banner name of the Nigerian National Alliance, the NCNC was left with no alternative but to go into alliance with those members of the action group who were still loyal to Awolowo. The coalition that Awolowo tried to have with Azikiwe, that was never to happen. In defeat, Azikiwe decided to go and look for the remnants of Awolowo while Awolowo is in prison, make a coalition with them, build alliance with them. The beginning of an end. However, with Awolowo in prison and Azikiwe trapped in the presidency, this coming together of the decapitated parties was a poor shadow of the Southern Alliance that Awolowo had been pushing for all along. With the NNA effectively controlling the North and through Akintola also the Western region, the OPGA knew that to stand any chance of victory in the elections, it had to win seats in the Northern region. A hard task was made impossible by the no-holds-barred tactics adopted by the NPC-controlled federal government. The campaign was marked by a fair amount of thuggery by party stalwarts. Conditions were so bad in TV division that the army had to be sent in. Certain NPC officials in the North showed an excess of zeal when they forcibly prevented certain OPGA candidates in the far North from filling their nomination papers, and so secured the unopposed return of 67 NPC candidates. Faced with the prospect of being outmuscled in the electoral contests, the OPGA decided to boycott the elections in the mistaken assumption that its rival had any interest in a fair contest. When the NNA claimed victory by default in the East and in the Federation overall, the OPGA refused to accept the result. Azikiwe, the former leader of the Eastern region, but who had been kicked upstairs to the largely ceremonial office of President of the Federation in October 1963, was now drawn into the fray to decide who would form the new government, his former party in the East or his former partners in the North. He initially resisted Balewa's demand to be reappointed prime minister, to the point that president and prime minister were not on speaking terms. But suspending the constitution in the face of the stalemate depended upon his authority being accepted by the army. With a British general, Major General Welby Everard, still the general officer commanding the Nigerian army, there was little prospect of him getting British support for anything but the return of Balewa to power. In the end, it was Balewa's enemy that he was forced to call upon to form the new government. After this very public standoff between prime minister and president, the administration had little prospect of making it through to the next scheduled elections. The importance of the post of the commander of the army, having been highlighted by this episode and having been previously stressed by Sherwood Smith, it is a curious thing that when in February 1965, Major General Welby Everard had to be replaced by one of 4 Nigerian brigadiers, Maimalari, Ogundipe, Ademulegun, or Agoyin-Ironsi. It was the Igbo man, Agoyin-Ironsi, who was appointed rather than the northerner, Maimalari, especially since, as it will emerge later in these accounts, Agoyin-Ironsi appears not to have had the best credentials. Operation Wetie. The already heated political situation in the country was made worse when regional elections in the Western region followed in October 1965. At these elections, Akintola was looking to be legitimized as the political voice of the people of the Western region. For the NPC, victory in these elections for its alliance partner would put the party in a position where it would effectively be in control of the whole of Nigeria, excepting only the Eastern region. With the memory of the imprisonment of their leader, Awolowo, still fresh, An insurgency broke out in the Western region when the NPC-NNDP alliance partners resorted to the same bullying tactics they had used in the federal elections in the East to produce an improbable victory for Akintola's NNDP. The plan to foreclose any chance of an electoral victory for the NNDP's opponent was multifaceted. Opposition candidates and voters were often intimidated or prevented from filing nomination papers or voting. Even where opposition candidates managed to stand for election and win, results declared at polling stations. Radio announcements would announce a different set of results, with NNDP candidates being declared unopposed winners. The NNDP was shockingly declared the winner of the elections against all expectations. Many Westerners could not understand how a party they loved and voted against could have possibly gained a legitimate victory. Akintola's retention of power led to even greater violence in the Western region. Protests, arson, and murders placed many parts of the Western region into a state of near anarchy, which earned the region the nickname of the Wild West. Wild West. I remember that. While the federal government had been quick to declare a state of emergency on the back of the fisticuffs within the Western Region House of Assembly in 1962, it was content to stand back and watch the West burn, even though estimates suggested that more than 2,000 people had been killed in the violence, which trailed the announcement of Akintola's electoral victory. The federal government's indifference to the bloodshed in the Western region was all the more remarkable given that the Briton, Major General Welby Everett, was still the head of the army at this time. And another Briton, John Hilary Smith, was serving as Deputy Secretary to Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa. Everything pointed to the blind eye being a policy decision. The 1966 coups. It was while the West was burning that the first military coup in the country occurred on Saturday, 15th January, 1966. Of the many mysteries surrounding this coup, the most intriguing is how a soldier with the nickname Ironside emerged as Nigeria's first military ruler. Major General Johnson Thomas Umunakwe Aguiyi Ironsi is said to have acquired the nickname while he was serving with a United Nations peacekeeping force in the Congo. It is suggested that the nickname Ironside had been given to him by British officers as a corruption of his surname, Ironsi, with reference to various military historical parallels on account of his feats of valor. Of his feats of valor. Only that it appears that his surname was not actually Ironsi, a word with no obvious meaning or common usage in the Igbo language, but simply Aguiyi, which means crocodile. Thus, it seems that what happened was that his nickname was corrupted to form part of his surname. Further, the suggestion that he was an exceptional soldier is not borne out by the available evidence. The following is an extract from a magazine interview that Major Chukwuma Nzeogu, the lead actor in the coup that brought him to power, is reported to have given in May 1967. Ejindu, asking or interviewing Kaduna Nzeogu now. So I will be quoting their charts. Ejindu asked, tell me, what do you think of him, Ironsi, as a soldier? Nzeogu replied, I'm afraid I cannot tell you that, but I will say that as a person, he was very well liked, and as the Supreme Commander, his orders were promptly carried out. Ejindu again. If he joined the army as a gunner, he must have progressed as a military strategist. Nzeogu replied, yes, if he had, he could have done so. But he actually joined the army as a tally clerk and was a clerk most of the time. Nzeogu's assessment does not stand in isolation. Its thrust is supported by another account of Ironsi's performance in Congo. The report, Lieutenant Colonel Ironsi's inexperience must also have added to the difficulties at Bukavu. When he was second in command of one QONR, he had not gone to the Cameroons, but had been left behind in Enugu to supervise the rear details. At Bukavu, he found himself faced by unusual difficulties, which would have taxed an experienced battalion commander, but he was evidently held partly to blame. When one QONR returned to Nigeria in May 1961, Ironsi was posted away to London to the obscure position of military advisor to the Nigerian High Commission, and he did not hold another command in the Nigerian Army until October 1964. The timing of the coup was also curious, given that it occurred just 3 days after the close of a Commonwealth conference that had been held in Lagos from 10 to 12 January to discuss the unilateral declaration of independence by the white minority government of Rhodesia. This being the first time that such a meeting of Commonwealth head of government was being held outside London, it would be reasonable to expect that intelligence gathering on security issues would have been of the highest order, not least because of the virtual civil war that was then raging in the Western region at this time, as graphically recounted by the British Prime Minister at the time, Harold Wilson, in his memoirs. We arrived at about 10 p.m. on 10th January. Sir Abubakar and I drove to the city along a road that I came to know so well 3 years later. There was great enthusiasm at the roadside, but behind the shears sounded the ominous distance crackle of insurgent gunfire, which from time to time we were able to hear from the heavily guided conference hotel. The conference ended in an atmosphere of unity, even euphoria. Abubakar, full of justified pride, insisted on riding with me to the airport. Again, we heard the rifle fire. As we turned into the airport entrance, he said to me, "You have a great future as Prime Minister of our mother country. You are fortunate. One thing only I wish for you, that you never have to become Prime Minister of a federal and divided country." That was on Wednesday, 11th January. On the Saturday, 15th January, he was dead, and his body was later found in a ditch, the victims of a communal uprising. This was what the former British Prime Minister, Harold Wilson, wrote in his own memoir of his own experience just a few days before the coup that killed Balewa, Bello, Akintola, and many others. What is more, Chukwuma Nzeogu, the driving force behind the coup, was already on the watch of British intelligence. Chukwuma was not only very vocal in his views about East-West relations, he even went as far as visiting Hungary in the summer of 1959 to see things for himself. Unknown to him, the British intelligence had been on his trail. Adewale Ademoyega, who together with Nze Ogun and Ifeanyi Juna was one of the three lead coup plotters, said that throughout 1965, Nze Ogun spoke freely and openly to some young officers about his plan to stage a coup. In fact, during the planning stages of the coup, according to General Olusegun Obasanjo's account, a formal report had been made by one Captain Udowoid to Brigadier Ademulegun of Nze Ogun's activities in brainwashing officers against the government. Obasanjo put it forward this way. Captain Udowoid quoted Chukwuma saying to junior officers, wait until the day you will look at the senior officers through the sights of your rifles. Brigadier Ademulegun, who was a victim of the coup, received the letter and referred it to Colonel Sodende, another victim of the coup, and Chukwuma's commandant, for his comments. Brigadier Ademulegun reported the case to Army headquarters in Lagos and described Chukwuma as a young man in a hurry who should be closely watched. Obasanjo does not say what the response from Army headquarters was, and neither did Brigadier nor the colonel lived to tell the tale after the coup. The Igbo coup claim. Above all else, the most intriguing aspect of the tale of Ironsi's emergence as Nigeria's first military ruler is the coincidence of the nickname Ironside with the old Ironsides, nickname of Oliver Cromwell, Britain's first military ruler following a coup. Still, the coup was said to be an Igbo coup to seize power from the north. Those propagating this view, those propagating this viewpoints to the fact, those propagating this view points to the fact that not only did an Igbo Major General Aguiyi Ironsi emerge as the new military ruler, the lead actors in the coup plot, with one Yoruba exception, Adewale Ademoyega, were Igbos, that the coup succeeded in eliminating its main targets in the north, the premier of the northern region, Ahmadu Bello, and the federal prime minister, Tafawa Balewa, and their allies in the west, Premier Samuel Akintola and Chief Festus Okotie-Eboh. Awolowo and Enahoro languishing safely in prison, while those who might have been targets in the eastern region, President Nnamdi Azikiwe and Premier Michael Okpara, were left untouched, lent support to this view. However, the claim that this was an Igbo coup targeted at northerners is not credible, considering other factors that have emerged. In the first place, the victim count does not take account of the fact that Brigadier Ademulegun and Colonel Sodende, the two most senior Yoruba officers in the army, were killed. Also, Major General Onwua Tuegu, after killing Sodende, simply arrested the governor of the northern region, Sir Kashim Ibrahim, when he might have been eliminated if the Igbo power grab story is to be believed. More importantly, the lead actor, Chukwuma Kaduna Nze Ogun, certainly did not see himself as pursuing any Igbo agenda. He was one of the Igbos who had been born and raised in the north. In Kaduna, his best friend was Olusegun Obasanjo, a Yoruba man. His politics was pan-Africanist in the mold of Azikiwe.